yesterday approached the charred ruins. Everything was in ashes, but—" he lowered his voice. "We found what seemed to be the body of Boris the hound. In another room was a charred corpse, whose hunting horn, melted to a molten mass, told us that it had been Herbert the forester. And there was another corpse, almost shapeless, utterly unrecognisable. We saw it. The charcoal burners saw it. Then more peasants came round, drawn by the sight of the flames. None could tell who it was. Only I and James knew. And we mounted our horses and have ridden here to tell the king." Sapt finished his lesson or his story. A sob burst from the Queen, and she hid her face in her hands. Bernenstein and I, amazed at this strange tale, scarcely understanding whether it were jest or earnest, stood staring stupidly at Sapt. Then I, overcome by the strange thing, turned half foolish by the bizarre mingling of comedy and impressiveness in Sapt's rendering of it, plucked him by the sleeve, and asked, with something between a laugh and a gasp, "Who had that other corpse been, Constable?" He turned his small, keen eyes on me, in persistent gravity and unflinching effrontery. "Mr. Rassendyll, a friend of the king's, who, with his servant James, was awaiting his Majesty's return from Strelsau. His servant here is ready to start for England, to tell Mr. Rassendyll's relatives the news." The Queen had begun to listen before now. Her eyes were fixed on Sapt, and she had stretched out one arm to him, as if imploring him to read her his riddle. But a few words had in truth declared his device plainly enough in all its simplicity. Rudolf Rassendyll was dead, his body burnt to a cinder, and the king was alive, whole, and on his throne in Strelsau. Thus had Sapt caught from James, the servant, the infection of his madness, and had fulfilled in action the strange imagination which the little man had unfolded to him, in order to pass their idle hours at the lodge. Suddenly Mr. Rassendyll spoke in clear, short tones. "This is all a lie, Sapt." A restless movement and a weary sigh from Rischenheim attracted their attention. He had strained his ears to listen till his head ached, but the talkers had been careful, and he had heard nothing that threw light on their deliberations. He had now given up his vain attempt, and sat in listless inattention, sunk in apathy. "I don't think he'll give you much trouble," whispered Sapt to Bernenstein, with a jerk of his thumb towards the captive. "Act as if he were likely to give you much," urged Rudolf, laying his hand on the lieutenant's arm. "Yes, that's a wise man's advice," nodded the constable approvingly. "We were well governed, Lieutenant, when this Rudolf was king." "Wasn't I also his loyal subject?" asked young Bernenstein. "Yes, wounded in my service," added Rudolf, for he remembered how the boy, he was little more then, had been fired upon in the park of Tarlenheim, being taken for Mr. Rassendyll himself. Thus their plans were laid. If they could defeat Rupert, they would have Rischenheim at their mercy. If they could keep Rischenheim out of the way while they used his name in their trick, they had a strong chance of deluding and killing Rupert. Yes, of killing him. For that and nothing less was their purpose, as the Constable of Zenda himself has told me. "We would have stood on no ceremony," he said. "The Queen's honour was at stake, and the fellow himself an assassin." Bernenstein rose and went out. He was gone about half an hour, being employed in dispatching the telegrams to Strelsau. Rudolf and Sapt used the interval to explain to Rischenheim what they proposed to do with him. They asked no pledge, and he offered none. He heard what they said with a dull, uninterested air. When asked if he would go without resistance, he laughed a bitter laugh. "How can I resist?" he asked. "I should have a bullet through my head." "Why, without doubt," said Colonel Sapt. "My lord, you are very sensible." "Let me advise you, my lord," said Rudolf, looking down on him kindly enough, "if you come safe through this affair, to add honour to your prudence and chivalry to your honour. There is still time for you to become a gentleman." He turned away, followed by a glance of anger from the Count and a grating chuckle from old Sapt.